Naima had always been the kind of person who gave her whole heart to love, to friendships, to life. Living in the warm coastal city of Mombasa, Kenya, she believed in loyalty, in kindness, and in the idea that love, no matter how hard, was always worth it. So when her relationship ended, it wasn't just the heartbreak that shattered her, it was the betrayal that followed. Her boyfriend had cheated, and just when she thought things couldn't get worse, her best friend Jalila took his side, not quietly, not from a distance, but loudly, cruelly, and to Naima's face. "You're too broken," Jalila said coldly, her voice like ice. "No man will ever truly love you again." That one sentence hit harder than the breakup itself. This wasn't just a friend being harsh. This was the person Naima had laughed with, cried with, trusted with her deepest fears. Jalila knew her insecurities, knew how fragile Naima's heart could be, and she used it as a weapon. The days that followed felt like drowning. Naima kept replaying those words in her head. Every memory of the good times felt poisoned. She stayed in bed longer, stared at the ceiling more. She didn't cry loudly. The pain was too deep for tears. It sat in her chest like a weight, making it hard to breathe. What hurt the most wasn't losing the guy. It was losing the person she thought would always be on her side. And in that silence after betrayal, Naima began to wonder if maybe Jalila was right. Naima wasn't herself anymore. The girl who used to light up every room with her laughter now barely spoke. She stopped picking up calls, replying to messages, or going out. Days blurred into nights, and all she could feel was numbness. The pain from the breakup and Jalila's cruel words had sunk deep into her heart. She started to believe them. Too broken, unlovable. Those words followed her like a shadow. Every time she looked in the mirror, it wasn't just her reflection. It was Jalila's voice echoing in her head. At work, things began to fall apart. She missed deadlines, zoned out during meetings, and barely made it through the day without crying in the bathroom. Her boss gave her warning after warning, but Naima couldn't explain the heaviness she carried inside. Even eating became hard. She lost weight, lost energy, lost herself. The worst part was the whispers. People she once called friends started talking behind her back. "She's not over it. She's acting dramatic." Some even said Jalila was right. Those little comments found their way to Naima, and each one added another crack to her already shattered self-worth. So, she pulled away from everyone, closed off. She stopped going to her favorite cafe, stopped painting, something that once brought her peace. Her small apartment in Mombasa became a quiet, dark space where hope didn't visit. She would lie in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she'd ever feel okay again. Sometimes she feared she never would, but then something unexpected happened. One evening, her elderly neighbour knocked on her door with a small bowl of soup. "You haven't been outside in days, dear," the woman said kindly. "I thought you might be hungry." It was such a simple gesture, warm food and a warm smile, but it cracked something open in Naima. For the first time in weeks, she felt seen. Someone cared, even just a little. And that small moment, that tiny light in the middle of her darkness, reminded her that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of her story. Naima hadn't planned on going to Nairobi. She still felt fragile, like a glass that could crack at any moment. But her cousin insisted she needed a change of scenery, a break from the pain and the memories. So, after much hesitation, she packed a small bag and boarded a bus to the city, not knowing that her life was about to shift in the most unexpected way. One quiet afternoon, she wandered into a small art gallery tucked between busy streets. The space was calm, filled with colours and soft music. It felt safe, almost like the silence was hugging her. She walked slowly from one painting to the next, letting the creativity of others fill the empty parts of her. That's when she saw him, standing near a photo display, camera in hand, studying the light coming through the window. He was tall, with gentle eyes, and a calm presence that somehow made her feel less tense. He smiled at her, a real, warm smile, and said, "This piece, it feels like it's telling a secret." She nodded, unsure of what to say, but something about him made her want to speak. His name was Kwame, a photographer from Ghana, in town for a short project. But even in those first moments, he didn't feel like a stranger. They talked, first about art, then about everything else. She told him little pieces of her story, careful and slow, waiting for the flinch, the pity, the awkward silence. But none came. He listened, really listened. Not once did he try to fix her. He just made space for her pain, like it deserved to be there without apology. Over the next few weeks, they kept meeting at galleries, coffee shops, quiet parks. He showed her his world through his lens, and slowly she started seeing her own life differently. The way he looked at her, with such quiet admiration, made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in a long time. Naima didn't know what this connection was yet. It was too soon to name it love, but something soft and beautiful was growing, something gentle that wrapped around her like sunlight after a long, dark storm. And for the first time in months, she didn't feel broken. She felt alive. With every passing day, Naima found herself opening up a little more. Kwame had a quiet way of making her feel safe, not by saying all the right things, but simply by being there, patient and present. He never rushed her healing. He just walked beside her, one step at a time. One evening, while they sat on a rooftop watching the Nairobi sunset, he asked her gently, "Why did you stop painting?" Naima looked down, hesitating. "I didn't feel like I had anything worth showing anymore," she whispered. He didn't argue or try to convince her otherwise. Instead, he said, "Then maybe it's time to paint for yourself again, not for anyone else." Those words stayed with her. The next morning, Naima pulled out her old brushes. They were dusty, and the paint tubes were nearly dried out. But her hands remembered. The first strokes were shaky, but something stirred deep inside her, something she thought she'd lost. She started painting again. At first, just a little, then every day. Her walls slowly filled with color. Her thoughts grew clearer, and her heart a little lighter. Kwame kept cheering her on. "You should open your own studio," he said one day. Naima laughed, thinking he was joking, but he wasn't. "Your art has a voice. People need to see it. You need to see what you're capable of." For the first time, she allowed herself to dream. She began researching spaces, sketching ideas, planning how to make it real. Piece by piece, Naima wasn't just painting again. She was building her future. She no longer cared about the opinions of people who once doubted her. Not Jalila, not the gossiping friends, not even her ex. Her smile returned. Not the forced one she used to wear for the world, but the real one, the one that came from deep within. She started walking differently, speaking with more confidence, holding her head a little higher. Naima had spent so long thinking she needed to be fixed. But now, she understood something powerful. She was never broken. She had only been buried. And now, she was rising. Naima never expected Jalila to show up again. Not after everything. She had moved on quietly, focused on healing, on building her art studio, and on this new chapter of her life with Kwame. Things were finally starting to feel good again. Her days were filled with color, laughter, purpose, and most of all, peace. But peace has a way of attracting people who once tried to destroy it. One morning, Naima posted a photo on Instagram. It was simple, just her and Kwame laughing at an art market, his arm around her, both of them glowing with happiness. The caption read, "Joy found me when I stopped chasing what hurt me." The comments rolled in, heart emojis, kind words, support. But buried between the love was a message she hadn't expected. A DM from Jalila. "Just make sure he doesn't leave like the last one," it read, followed by a wink emoji. Naima stared at the message for a moment. The old version of her might have cried, might have overthought it, replayed the words in her head for days, letting them eat away at her confidence. But this time, she didn't feel a sting. She felt something else. Clarity. She looked at the message again and smiled, not with anger, but with power, because it didn't matter anymore. Jalila's words couldn't reach her. Not now. Not after everything she had rebuilt. Naima didn't respond. She didn't ask why. She didn't try to explain herself. She simply clicked block. No drama, no second thoughts. Just a quiet goodbye to a voice that no longer had power over her life. She stood up, stretched, and walked back to her studio, where Kwame was helping hang one of her newest paintings. He turned to her and smiled, the kind of smile that said, "I see you." And for the first time, she truly saw herself too. Not broken, not insecure, not afraid, but strong, loved, and finally free. Let them talk, she thought. Let them watch. She had no space left for jealousy, only growth, only love. The rain had been soft all evening, not the kind that ruins plans, but the gentle kind that makes everything feel calm and magical. Naima didn't know what Kwame had planned. He had simply told her, "Dress warm, wear something you love, and trust me." They were in Accra for a short trip. Naima thought it was just a getaway, a little break from work and life. But as they drove toward the beach, something in the air felt different. When they arrived, she gasped. The shoreline was glowing with lanterns, each one flickering gently in the breeze. There was no crowd, no noise, just the ocean, the lights, and the sound of waves. Kwame led her to a little path made of rose petals, and at the end of it, under a canopy of twinkling lights, he stopped and turned to face her. Naima's heart was racing. She could feel the warmth of her family and close friends watching from a distance, hidden behind palm trees, holding their breath. "I brought you here," Kwame began softly, "not just because it's beautiful, but because love brought me here, to you." His voice shook slightly. "When I met you, I saw more than your pain. I saw your strength, your art, your soul. And every day since, I've fallen more in love with the woman you've become. Not perfect, not pretending, just real and powerful and full of grace." Then from his pocket, he pulled out a small box. But inside wasn't just any ring. It was one he'd made by hand, a gold band with a carved shell from the beach where they had first spoken about their dreams. "Will you be my home, Naima? Will you say yes? To me, to us, to the life we can build together?" Tears filled her eyes. She didn't need time to think. She smiled, her whole heart shining through her eyes, and whispered, "Yes, 1,000 times, yes." As he slipped the ring onto her finger, the rain stopped, almost like the sky had been holding its breath too. Laughter, cheers, and happy tears echoed in the distance. Naima wasn't just saying yes to Kwame. She was saying yes to herself, to healing, to love, to a future she never thought she'd find, but now couldn't imagine living without. Naima had always loved tradition, the colors, the music, the meaning behind every little detail. So when it came time to plan her wedding with Kwame, she knew one thing for sure. She wanted it to be a celebration of where they both came from. Swahili elegance from her coastal roots in Kenya, and the rich beauty of Ghanaian culture from Kwame's side. Planning the wedding became more than just picking a dress or choosing flowers. It became a journey. Naima dove deep into both cultures, finding ways to blend the two in a way that felt authentic and beautiful. She chose a kitenge dress with intricate gold beading for the Kenyan ceremony, and for the Ghanaian part, she wore a stunning kente cloth gown, hand-woven and full of meaning. Every song, every dance, every dish told a story, their story. As she shared small moments of the planning process on Instagram, clips of her trying on traditional jewelry, her mom showing her how to tie a lesso, Kwame laughing while learning Swahili dance moves, people began to take notice. Her posts were warm, real, and full of joy. Comments poured in. "This is so beautiful. You're glowing. This love is inspiring." Naima, the same woman once told she was too broken, was now being called goals. The same people who once whispered behind her back were now watching in awe, following her journey like a storybook unfolding. But this wasn't about proving anyone wrong anymore. It was about celebrating how far she had come. Her skin glowed brighter, her laugh came easier, and her spirit felt light. She was no longer planning a wedding just to marry the man she loved. She was honoring her identity, her culture, her path, and every piece of herself that had been through the fire and still chose to bloom. What touched her the most was that she wasn't doing this alone. Kwame stood beside her every step of the way, proud and supportive, just like always. Together, they weren't just preparing for one beautiful day, they were building a forever that felt like home. And through it all, Naima kept smiling, not for the likes, not for the attention, but because she finally, truly, deeply felt happy. Naima didn't send the invite out of hate. It wasn't revenge, and it wasn't meant to start drama. It was quiet, intentional, a full circle moment. After everything Jalila had said, after the betrayal, after the pain, Naima had carried those words for too long. "You're too broken. No man will ever truly love you again." They had haunted her, but now they held no weight, and she wanted Jalila to know that. So she slipped one wedding invite into an envelope, the same invite that went out to all the people who mattered. But this one had something a little different. On the front, it read in bold, elegant letters, "You said I'd never find love again. Here's proof that you were wrong. No anger, no curse word, just truth." Inside was a photo, not staged, not overly perfect, just Naima and Kwame sitting barefoot on the beach, laughing, forehead to forehead, eyes closed, hearts open. They looked like peace. like joy, like everything Naima had once believed she'd never have. When Jalila opened that envelope, something shifted. She stared at the card in silence. Maybe she expected Naima to stay small forever. Maybe she thought her words had crushed her for good. But now, here was the same woman she once tore down, glowing, whole, in love, and absolutely untouchable. Jalila didn't reply. She didn't congratulate her. She didn't post about it. But the silence was loud, because sometimes the loudest statement isn't a scream, it's success. Naima didn't wait for a response. She didn't need one. She had already moved on. That invite wasn't about Jalila anymore. It was for Naima. A reminder that healing isn't about getting even. It's about rising so high your past can't even reach you. And as she sealed the other invites with joy and excitement, she smiled to herself. Not because she'd won, but because she was free, truly, beautifully, finally free. The sun was setting gently over Lake Victoria, casting a golden glow over the calm water. The breeze carried the soft sound of drums and laughter, and petals danced in the air as guests took their seats. Everything was perfect, not because it looked like a magazine, but because it felt like magic. This was Naima's wedding day. She stood at the edge of the aisle, her heart pounding, her hands gently clutching a bouquet wrapped in a piece of her late grandmother's kanga. Her dress flowed like waves, handmade with details from both Swahili and Ghanaian traditions. Every stitch, every bead told a story, her story. As she began to walk, her eyes welled up, not from nerves, but from memory. She remembered the nights she cried into her pillow, the mornings she didn't want to get out of bed, the voice in her head that said she wasn't enough. She remembered Jalila's words, sharp and cruel. You're too broken. No man will ever truly love you again. But now, every step she took was a step away from all of that, toward love, toward freedom, toward a man who didn't just love her, he saw her, and more importantly, she saw herself. The aisle was lined with friends and family from both Kenya and Ghana. The colors were rich, the joy was loud, and the love was thick in the air. Children giggled, elders nodded with pride, and somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered, "She made it." And she had. At the altar, Kwame stood tall, his eyes locked on hers, shining with the kind of love that didn't have to be proven, just felt. When their hands met, it was like the final piece of a puzzle falling into place. They exchanged vows under a sky turning pink and orange. And when the moment came to say, "I do," Naima didn't hesitate. She wasn't just marrying Kwame, she was marrying peace, strength, and the woman she'd become. As they kissed and the crowd erupted in cheers, Naima smiled. Not just the smile you give for photos, the real kind, the kind that says, "I survived," the kind that says, "I turned pain into purpose." And she had never felt more powerful. Naima now wakes up every morning with a heart full of peace and a purpose that lights her up from within. Her art studio is no longer just a dream, it's her full-time life. The same hands that once wiped away tears are now covered in paint, creating pieces that tell stories of healing, hope, and power. Her studio walls are filled with vibrant colors, each one carrying emotion, and every brushstroke reminds her of how far she's come. But Naima didn't stop at her own healing. She opened her doors to young girls who had been told they weren't enough, girls who had faced heartbreak, rejection, and betrayal. She started a mentorship program where they come to paint, talk, and rebuild their self-worth, just like she once did. She tells them gently, "Your story isn't over just because someone made you feel broken." Soon, her journey started to inspire more people. African lifestyle blogs began to feature her story. Headlines read, "From heartbreak to healing, Naima's art of becoming." Her Instagram turned from a page of pain into a gallery of strength. People from across the continent messaged her saying, "You made me believe in love again, starting with myself." And then, in the final scene, soft music plays, showing her laughing with kids at her studio, sharing a quiet dinner with Kwame, or painting late into the night. Her voice comes in like a warm breeze saying, "Sometimes love doesn't come when you're looking for it. Sometimes it finds you right when you finally learn to love yourself again." And just like that, Naima's story, once filled with pain, becomes a powerful beginning. One filled with color, courage, and a love that starts within.